Welcome to the video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to tear down this old Super Nintendo down to its motherboard so that you could clean the shell and replace any parts you need to. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get your hands on two things. That's all you need to get into it. The first is a Phillips head screwdriver just like this, about this size. And then the second is this game bit head for a screwdriver. It just fits right in, and it lets you get at the 6 screws on the bottom that are going to like hold the system in place. So if you flip over the system like this, you can see that there's actually 6 screws down here at the bottom, and they hold the top and the bottom together, keeping everything together in one piece. So I've gone ahead and taken those out. That's what this 4.5 millimeter game bit screw you can get online. I'll leave a link in the description as well, so where you can get one of those. And then I would recommend buying the pack that comes also with this 3.8 millimeter, because it's like it's what lets you get into these games over here, and I'll explain that in a minute as well. So this is really just getting in to replace a part or to clean. So you can see here, the first thing I like to do is take all the screws out and take this expansion port off, just so you can clean it better. It's funny actually, it's like nothing in the United States uses this expansion port. Like in Japan, I do have a Super Famicom, and they use the Satellaview and stuff like that to try to make use of this expansion port, but we didn't really use it. And then the Sony PlayStation was actually originally a partnership between Nintendo and Sony to make a CD add-on for this thing, so it's kind of hard to imagine the original PlayStation underneath this. So anyway, with all of those screws off, you flip it over, and then you just lift and take off the top, and now we can get into the system. So I've already taken out the majority of the screws in here. I just wanted to show you how to actually tear down the difficult bits. All I did was take out like 4 or 5 screws, 2 up here that are keeping this power button in place, 1 underneath the power button, 1 over here, and then 1 back here. And they're all these like bronze looking screws. Then there's only 1 other type of screw on the system. So there's 3 total. There's these bronze Phillips heads, there's the game bit screws I mentioned that are on the outside of the system, and then there's 4 of these gray screws here. There's 2 on the controller, the pin connector here, right here and right here, and then there's 2 in the back. There's 1 kind of hidden away here and 1 hidden away here. And if you're watching this video and doing a teardown of your own Super Nintendo, and it looks a little different than mine, what you're going to need to do is take out 2 more screws. Yours probably has a box right here in about this area. That's a chip, and it's like a sound thing that they took out of this later model Super Nintendo. So if I'm right and you're watching this video and tearing down your Super Nintendo, take out a screw right about here and 1 right about here, and you should be good. And then that just pulls straight out, and there's like a little teeth thing here, so give it some pull after you get those screws. Anyway, if you have that kind of Super Nintendo and you did that, or you have this kind of Super Nintendo, then the next step would be to take this eject button out for cleaning, or if it's broken or yellowed, to replace it. And that's pretty easy. It's easy to take out, but it's hard to put in. So you just lift this little thing up and pull the whole assembly out. And then I like to use my little magnetic screwdriver to try to like get at that. This one doesn't want to cooperate, but there's a little spring that kind of falls off. Okay, so now there's only 4 more screws we need to get out. 2 are right here, holding in the AC adapter port and the multi-out and the RF port right here on the back of the system. And those are just right there and there. You don't even have to pull them out because they'll lift out. And then the other 2 are up here at the front, or the middle, and they hold in the pin connector here. Can't seem to get a hold on that one. Oh, and what you're trying to do by tearing apart your Super Nintendo is to replace this pin connector here. Then all you will do, I'm not going to do it here because it's like a pain, but for you will take off this thing here, the heat sink, that just comes right off at this point, and then you just like lift and give it some strength, but it does come right on. So at this point, what we're gonna wanna do is take the controller ports and just lay them here. Like, you could remove the ribbon cable, but unless you really need to clean your controller ports with something that just some alcohol couldn't handle, you can actually pop them off of this, and you could unplug it here, but I would just recommend leaving it as it is. So at this point, this whole assembly should just like come out like this, and you've got two more things to take out that are really simple. One is not even attached at all. It's this little bronze thing here. It comes out. I'm not going to take it out here because it's self-explanatory what to do, but there's a Phillips head screw there. You unscrew it and you take this off. And you really just want to do that so you can actually clean out your system. My recommendation for you, if you still don't know how to clean out your system, there might be a lot of dust or dirt or whatever in here, just honestly fill up the sink with hot water and soap and scrub. You might not want to scratch off any of the stickers, but you really won't. You probably have some combination of these metal stickers, or like maybe a paper sticker that should have been here, and this Mario sticker on the back. If you really don't want to get rid of those, you shouldn't worry about the metal ones, or really even the Mario, as long as you treat it right, the little fixed sticker here. Because I've done that to this system a couple times to clean it out over the years, and you know, it is honestly one of the best looking Super Nintendos I've ever seen. Even in sticker condition, I even have on my Super Nintendo, to bring the top back, still this like this warning sticker that like nobody has that I've seen, and I've scrubbed at it with a bristle brush. This whole thing is just fine. So that's how you would clean it. And so now, if you've taken yours apart and you've cleaned it, and you're coming back to the video wondering how do I put it back together because maybe you messed up along the way, I will show you that now. This is putting it back together. So the first thing you're gonna want to do before you forget, I don't know what purpose they serve, but you still just want to put them back on. Screw this little guy back in here, and then just slide that one back into place. The next thing you're gonna want to do is take the board here and just slide it right back into place, and put the controller ports right back where they go. They just sit there. They're held in place by the top and the bottom closing in. Then you're just gonna want to screw these screws that we just unscrewed back into place. What I like to do when I'm cleaning a system like this is I just leave these types of screws in the motherboard when I'm like unscrewing everything, and then that way when I have the system and I'm putting it back together, I don't have to think like, oh, where does this screw go, or where does that screw go? Of course, if your system is yellowed and that's why you're taking it apart, you're probably going to want to just lay this whole assembly somewhere and wait the number of hours, depending on your method, to get it out. So now that we've got those 4 screws back in, that's nice and attached. What we're going to want to do is take this big piece of metal, the heatsink, and it actually kind of plugs in right here, so make sure you get that right and it lines up there nice. And we're going to start reattaching these little bronze screws to the system. And if you have any, this is pretty straightforward, so I'm going to talk about another thing while I do it, but you can just see where I'm screwing them in to see where the placements are. I'll point to it when I'm done where it is, just so you can see. But I wanted to mention the Super Nintendo is a great system. The games on this system still look gorgeous in 2019. In fact, personally, let's see, the Super Nintendo came out in 1991, so I was -1 when the system came out in North America, -10 when it came out in Japan, I think it was 90, and -8 when it came out in Europe. But I still have fond memories. My dad had one of these in college, and so I grew up with a Super Nintendo in the house, and then we sold that one at a garage sale and got this one later. So yeah, I would really recommend picking up this system. I don't know why you're watching this video if you don't have the system, but if you're just watching this out of entertainment, you want to see what the inside looks like, it's really not hard to tear apart a Super Nintendo. As you can see, I'm just, you know, kind of chatting with you and putting it back together. So So that's that. Those are all the screws. There's only 5, I think, of those bronze ones. The only kind of tricky one for placement, or 1 or 2 that I would mention, is that there's one underneath this power button. So put the power button on after you do it. And then there's one back here. So those are those. Now, this one is kind of difficult. So maybe this is why you clicked on this video. I'm going to be showing you putting back together the eject button assembly here. So basically, the first part is pretty straightforward. You take your eject button thing like this, and you run the little metal thing through it. Now, just a quick aside, your Super Nintendo version, I've opened up maybe 10 Super Nintendos, and about half of the time it looks like mine does with this little thing at the end, and the other half of the time it's just a straight line. They function the same, but just keep that in mind that if you have this version here, like I do, this end should be over here because it fits in that little slot. And then you take the spring, let's put that back in place. You take the spring, and this is going to be kind of hard to show you, and you're going to want to put it around here and hook it in there so that it pushes like that. Now, I do a thing where it's kind of hard to show you this, but there's this long end of the spring fits down here in the Super Nintendo like that. That's what causes the spring action to kind of work. So what I do is I hook the little one in, and then I put the metal bar inside of the plastic over here, and then I just try to find the entry point, push it in there, and everything just kind of attaches like that. It kind of falls into place. And when you're done, you should see a nice spring mechanism when you push down on the eject button. So that'll push the game up. Always use this, by the way. Oh my gosh, I would hate like going to friends' houses, and when you put a game in the here, come on, it's one of those with the 3 things underneath. When you put a game in the slot, they'd always just like rip it off, but just hit it with the eject button, for goodness sake. In fact, this is a Japanese game, and they make you, because on the Famicom a little thing goes in here. If you try to take it off, it won't work. A quick aside, by the way, if you want to leave this video because the only thing you wanted to see was putting it back together, the only thing to do now is put the top on and screw the screws in. But quick aside, if you wanted to mod your system before you put it back together, this is a Japanese game. Let me show you. If I have my Super Nintendo here, and that's basically done, I just need to screw it on the back, and I try to put an American game like Yoshi's Island here, it clicks right in. Obviously, you know, it works fine, and you eject it. But if I try to put in a Japanese game like this, you see that it won't work. You see here, it like doesn't go past that thing. The reason for this is because on the back of this American game, there are these 2 holes here, and those coincide with 2 little, you see those in there, that little pig there and that one peg on the other side. Now, the simplest mod in the world, I haven't done it on this one, but I have done it on another one that I have, the Super Nintendo Model 2, because I feel more okay like damaging those if I messed up. But it's a simple mod. You would just take a little Dremel tool, and you would go in there like with the tool, and you would like get rid of those little plastic things. I've seen people, these monsters, go in their Super Nintendos with like wire cutters or whatever. Please don't do that. Like, we're trying to preserve the system here, my guy. Just like Dremel tool it down or whatever. Invest the time. But then what'll happen there is that there is no region locking software or chip or anything on this system. So you can see that the boards look the same, except this is one of the more powerful ones. They had to expand some of the pins, but it will actually, believe it or not, fit. So if I were to plug this Super Nintendo up, American Super Nintendo, American Power, American Multi out to an American TV, and plug up this Prime Goal 2 Japanese game, it will play. And before I had a Super Famicom, that's actually how I played most of my games. So if you're thinking about getting a Super Famicom for any reason other than you just like the Super Famicom, maybe don't, waste your money. Maybe just use that little mod. And so I am going to quickly put back together the system. and wrap up the video. So that just slides right back on top like this. Just make sure everything works well. One thing I will say really quickly is if you're putting this top back on, make sure that this little white cube kind of lines up with that little power button there, so that when you've got it like this, you can test and it should click like that. And then make sure this one goes right back and forth. Look in there, you press the power button, maybe put a game in, eject it, I don't know. If you're worried the system is broken, test it out before you screw it back together. Flip it, put on the expansion port, and then screw it back together. So while I screw back together the Super Nintendo, I did just want to say thank you all for watching. This has been a fun little teardown. You get to hear about a mod or two, you get to see how to tear it down. So I hope you all have fun playing your Japanese games that you somehow have on your American console, or if you just needed to learn how to clean one of these systems, now you know how to do it. So thank you all for watching the video and have a nice day.